specifically studying the future at my researching this right point here. This attire seminar presentation is a work in progress. So your perspective to prison integration reading, very welcome. Out. It derives from humans overacting theme of being human. In particular, I explore the future of non-normative love in literary sci-fi novel titled Water and Flow from feminist and queer perspective. So who is meet this? Well, this as some of you may know, Nick was a naturalized South African science fiction writer and clinical psychologist. He was born in Kitwe, Zambia, then he was born in Nigeria in 1992. He died last year in June at the age of. What I'm not told is his second novel, published in 20 after Tanzania, which is published in Tanzania, first novel. Yes, he wrote a book on education. But before the new age, they published a lot of such stories here in Britain. All right, so let us get down to the analytical needed region. So what I'm for this novel is dominantly set in 2048 Sweden and American societies, which are rather global warming and its apocalyptic consequences of vegetation and discover images of the novel in history. At the heart of the novel conflict, intersected faith and narrative, Basson, Lizette Basson, and Raymond Green. Basson is a South African, is a West South African journalist, working on leadership, and a husband to Lizette, an African woman, former prime minister, and a victim of the Green is a mixed-race data sweeper and builder, who works the state control government of the leader in the city of North California. Unlike herself, Shabang reflects to operate in the spirit of the into which the inland township support high security. This is still and Mhlongo, a Zulu hybrid geologist, the mathematical data calculation for his research for the lab first and later diversities brand. Together, research and work lead the global active movement against the technological practices which siphons and monopolizes leaking reserves of water and sells it at exorbitant prices and capitalize, as well as committing various human rights abuses. In fact, the bisexual representation here involves in right proposals. They are heterodiegetic. The title of the name itself can be found recommended but land and water must share. This can be found. Here, the water must flow is the method but my focus in this yes, so particular attention is to imagine that this happens very specific. Gender is able to make this However, feminists have created tension when the end of hope is a clear that the end of feminist issues reinforce the actual gender equality. What do you want out of life? You can explain it. I want our new festival present because students are struggling so it's not it's not hard. I also want us to learn and reflect in learn and reflect. That is it. It takes some image. This is that the remain. This is the term. The picture of the missing is carrying the same. Okay, this is totally the same. So, in conclusion, this is what I'm saying. Project an alternative which against the full violence and violence. Within the emancipatory trajectory of this, youth empowered with great and where you were not only to fight for their clear human rights. Indeed, each sci-fi novel placed into a way of utopian place, their expression without any violence. In doing so, the challenges of the emerging future was very innovative. Thank you. This
I think I was asked to you. Speaker is on. Sorry. I'm unmuted. Can you mute you? Okay. Just need to just before. Okay, I think it's good now. Oh. Okay. Okay. Okay, good. That's great. I don't hear an echo, so that's perfect. Thank you. We just needed to adjust and to change the mic because apparently the audience online wasn't hearing us totally properly. So no, we're good. So we can start our conversation. First, yes, thank you so much, Innocent, for your presentation of this novel and the thematic exploration also of it. So I was curious about your choice of novel, and so I did a little like exploration online this week, and I went to Nickwood website to hear a bit more about his own perspective on futurity and on the place of the novel. So I like what I've learned from him directly from his word. Also, kind of guide me to certain questions to you as an expert, also disciplinary expert, and also somebody who is very familiar with the work. So first, I think my first question, as I'm opening this conversation, would be concerning like the particular way of knowing, African way of knowing that this novel show or not exemplify. And I'm curious about your understanding of the author Nick Wood in the that debate between like Afrofuturism and African futurism. I noticed that you use the first one, so I'm curious about your choice and himself. Nick Wood seems to like prefer the word African futurism, like he's citing authors that are presenting and exploring African futurism as a way of really like grounding the work into African imagination and the fiction into amongst all kinds of ways of knowing that are deployed on a continent. So that would be my first one. So it's kind of, a little contribution to that debate between Afrofuturism and African futurism. That's the second one is also about the kind of conception of the future that you see represented in the novel. And I read something interesting, like in his own presentation of his work. He says, I write about the future. I do science fiction, but I don't want to do dystopia because there's too many dystopia. And he's also saying that like his novel would fit into African solar punk. So I'm curious about that solarity of the fiction and that particular way of imagining like a future that is not dystopian. So my two questions are those, and with the last question, probably there's also an invitation to connect the thematic gender and sexuality focus that you had and the solarity of what is envisioned about the future. That is not, of course, about pessimism only and about denunciation. So I'm letting you start with those two questions, and I'm going to also ask everybody to be ready to ask the second round.
All right.
Okay, so you have like just a few minutes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the first question about African ways of knowing and the debate between the terms Afrofuturism versus African futurism, I'm aware of it because I'm also working on another article that it's based on artificial intelligence, but from the perspective of Afrofuturism. So what I can say about this is that what brings in confusion and debate, it's the prefix Afro, because most people associate Afro with the diaspora. But the others also feel that Afro pertains to the African continent, like Afrocentrism, so on and so forth. So Afro diaspora. So I didn't want to go into this debate because I think it's still ongoing. Different people have got different opinions. But what I can say to just show that Nick Wood is aware of the African context from which he's writing from is the fact that, as I've said, the novel is also set in future American society. So it's not only in Durban. So it's Durban and also America. So you can see that both dimensions of Afrofuturism or African futurism, they are also incorporated. So it's a debate that is going on, but I think he has represented Africa well because indigenous forms of knowledge. I couldn't go into details because of time restraint, but it's an ongoing debate, and I think it's trying to balance, even in terms of setting and even the subject matter. So there are even other queer identities from the US represented in the movie, but my focus was on African sexuality. As for the second question about dystopia and maybe whether we can read this novel as a form of cyberpunk, yes, I agree. There's also that dimension. I think if you consider the drought itself and those who are behind it, this multinational corporation, which operates worldwide, there's that element of crime also, a lot of it, especially in the American context. where we meet this other character, Green, Arthur Green. So there's that element, of course. You know, science fiction is also multifaceted. It's got different dimensions, dystopia, utopia, and all these elements sometimes could be represented in one novel differently. Finally, about the gender connection and solidarity. If I didn't quite catch you there.
No, I think it was more an invitation to maybe like reflect on the kind of the solidarity of this, not the solidarity, the solidarity in the sense that this is like his own choice of words to define like the genre is find himself part of the African solar punk, I think is saying. So it was more the connection with the description and the kind of implication for social change and also criticism, like criticism of. No, it's I could have I tend also to contract my words, so that could have been a possibility, but. Okay, let's start. I'm going to. We are going to take 3 questions. So you may start. Then we'll have Nabil and you, Carolina, and then we'll have a next round.
Great presentation. Thank you so much for the summary. This brings us because we see such as many issues in life, more creative, and it's all under. It's all shaped by climate policies. And a lot of feminist historians. The question is, has the author tried to engage the issue intersectionally? Have they tried to analyze how this community stays alive and find themselves intersectionally in? This is in our current terms, she's a white woman in a society, but she has much more privileges than a black woman. And as much as it's feminized and everything, but the feminists also have a point the part of this intersection and on top of them engaging in this unorthodox relationship context is the issue of race, the issue of power, because so how has he sort of addressed those political issues outside of the purely feminist activism as we know it, the European feminism? How has, because it sounds like it's also bringing a condition of the global south via America and Durban. How are these how does he conceptualize these conditions, these interactions in this post-apocalyptic society where the main political is now climate change? How is that now being contextualized? How does he actually address those intersectional and also does he at all address them? Used on absence of him, if of him addressing those issues and the intersection. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
We're going to take 2 more questions. So thank you so much. First question is on intersections. I think we can go to Nabil.
I noticed that the critique of patriarchy and heteronormativity in a futuristic setting of 2048 in Durban and the state. So we still have these parameters of or the author. I'm talking about the vision of the author when writing this, like how can we reconcile about this present dynamics of heteronormativity and patriarchy at the same time when we write sci-fi science fiction and talking about a future setting where we are not sure that such dynamics will be played out. So is there any kind of magic realism used to make these dynamics more complex? Otherwise, we would see them as very simplistic and naive to just like graft these present priorities onto the future, just like that, without any kind of problematization.
Thank you so much, Lizette. That was really interesting. I have two quick questions, but they relate to the previous questions. So the first one relates to the first question. But I was wondering more about the concept of feminist agency that you use, and like what values that is based on, like how, thinking about intersectionality, like how do we understand feminist agency of those two protagonists, and what does it entail? Is it like their responsibility to push back against those patriarchal capitalist values of that energy company, or is it, you know, fighting homophobia? Like what is that based on? How do we understand feminist agency? And yeah, and my second question was also about this, like, imagination of the future, and like how do we reconcile that with, yeah, and maybe that's a very academic question, but like how do we yesterday I was watching a documentary about the 2023 anti-homosexuality laws in Uganda, and how people in Uganda and also in South Africa demonstrated against that. Like, how do you reconcile this you know, futuristic imagination of changing ideas of gender and sexuality with what is still happening? Like how do we how can we maybe draw from this imagination to approach those things politically?
All right, thank you very much, Caroline. All right, I can take them on.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, let me start with the first set of questions. Again, I think wondering the sectionality in terms of race. That's a good question, because the first novel I showed you, published by Nico 2016, Azania and Bridges, it's interesting. Even the title itself is telling thematically, because Azania, as you know, it's the old name for South Africa, and the idea is that of the central theme in that novel is that of racial reconciliation, building bridges between the races. That's what the novel is all about. So this theme is what we see also continuing in this novel. And it's interesting because it doesn't only present the problem of sexuality only in the South African context, but also in the American context. I think at some point I alluded to this fact that there are also queer relationships in the North Californian setting. But for me, I was only interested in South African sexuality. That's why I referred to the three theories, queer in Africa. So because I was just only interested in that aspect, because it's a huge novel and there are many issues, as you have rightly pointed out. So I didn't want to conflate. So my focus was only on the relationship between queer identities in the South African context. Yeah, so, and again, to come back to the issue of intersectionality, about maybe the other one being privileged and the other one not, I think that's what Ngulube is trying to problematize and to make us rethink and imagine better relationships, in the sense that if you read how their relationship is developing, I couldn't go into minute details, but they are working hand in hand. There's no that racial hierarchy between these two lovers. It's interesting, really. Actually, you find that at some points, depending on the context, it's Busisiwe who is leading. And she finishes the novel with an epilogue. It's amazing, really. So there's that kind of balance, which I feel, in my view, is trying to make us rethink and change for the future. that we can do better for the future. So I really don't see, according to the way he has presented, that kind of conflict in terms of race, because this is a black woman and a white woman working hand in hand. As for the second question, which is interesting because it's a formal one and a philosophical one about the relationship between the present and the future, I think I also explained a bit about utopia. So I know that situations may not be as you would want them in the present, but if you're utopian in your thinking, if you think and you imagine better conditions and perhaps what measures you can put in place to change those existing asymmetries to forge a better future. So it's about the imagination. So it's got that element of, I think you used the word simplistic, yeah, because it's science fiction. You're thinking about a future, and different people think about the same future differently, and thinking about ways in which you can bring about that change. So for Nick Wood in this novel, it's that kind of, in terms of sexuality, it's the idea that it's possible to overcome patriarchy and heteronormativity if these queer identities take leading positions, because they are the ones who approach change in the novel through their leadership. So they are not only doing gender activism, but even ecological. So they're in the forefront. So again, you can see that he's changing the narrative that queer identities are minorities or should be minorities, but the playing field should be leveled, and anyone, regardless of their sexual orientation, should be given the chance to lead. So that's how I can answer the question. Coming to Caroline. Yeah, that's a good question about what exactly are they doing. I only hinted about them because of time, but as I've indicated, one, it's through open protest. Protest openly to assert their identity and agency, to say, no, this is what I choose to be and I'm going to be. And they even defy the church, even the mother, as you have noticed, to the point that over time people realize that we are mistreating fellow human beings, and people are changing. And in the end, they let them lead, and they bring the reign and they end the hegemony of this multinational company. Apart from open protest, also they are engaging in community services in Bali Township, bringing in solar and distributing water and even food, because food is also scarce at this point in time. So they're doing a lot. Apart from these community services, they're also involved in awareness. Gender awareness through philosophical clubs. So the philosophical clubs, and these two ladies take a leading role in spreading the awareness. And in the end, most people have changed their perception, as I've said. So I only give the example of the mother, but others also become amenable to the fact that they are also human beings and they need to be treated with dignity.
Thank you. So we're ready for the next round. So I see two hands here. I'm going to start myself. Sorry, I have the privilege of like, okay, and sometimes I'm like, I'm waiting for certain questions to be asked, and if they are not asked, I'm taking matters in my own hands. So why shall we read Nick Wood? Like, what shall we read Nick Wood's novel? If we want to understand what it is, for example, to be an interracial, like love affair between two women in South Africa, why this universe, literary universe, matter? Why is it interesting? So that's my first question, but I'm going to start with it, and then I have two questions. and maybe you have a follow-up. I don't know. Okay, so I have two questions by Sandile and also you. Fanny, go right. I'm unmuted, so you can just speak loud.
I'm very fascinated by even the way that you presented it, because one can be kind of fooled into thinking that this is a very simplistic account. But then when you think about like the conceptualization of the future and what is considered and what isn't, and also the place, and you know the structures that remain in the future, which is like, okay, the church, and then ecological issues that we're facing now. And so like the dominant structures that exist in the future just makes me wonder like how we conceptualize it. And it's very humbling as well, because then you realize that the human life is very short and not necessarily that. So as long as we think for like very deep changes to happen, but then also his way of thinking about the future is very interesting in terms of like issues that we think, like the absence of issues that we think are like so dominant in the way that we move today. So yeah, like just reflecting on what is present and what is absent and what is the dominant, the structures that are dominant, and like what is being challenged, and even the fact that they can challenge the church now, which is not necessarily something that can be easily done in many other African countries. Yeah, I just find that fascinating, and it's even a question, but I felt like I should say this. And also, yeah, what do you think about that? And what do you think about the way that authors similar to him kind of conceptualize the future? And how do you think what does that say about how we think about the future and how we should write about the future? Yeah.
All right, fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And last question for this one, with you, Sandile.
Thank you so much. There's a sense in which the author seems to promise a paradise that has arrived, or it may arrive. But it seems also that it's taking too many issues all at once and hoping to solve them. And that, in my view, affects the credibility of the text. And also there's a certain obsession with rainbowism, the idea that things between black and white can be hunky-dory overnight. It's a very complex question, and Louis Bossi has written about it as Mandela and Duke's fiction, the idea of the rainbow nation. So I would imagine that going forward, one needs to probe the author further, and the text further. It's not the author. The text further, and is it because maybe futurism gives them that license? I doubt it does. And these are some of the misgivings that we have within resolving all these issues. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Yours was first, I think.
Yeah, it was first, but if you want, you can. I think like the question that Sandy is asking, you can also like respond to the two of us at the same time, because I feel there's a question. My question was also related to positionality, and also in a way that I think would make sense with Sandy's question. So
all right, I think to answer all the three questions, I need to recontextualize Nick Wood's positionality. This is a writer of British descent, born in Zambia, but raised in South Africa. Already, in terms of race, is also a very well-rounded character, author figure with different experiences. And as I've said also, you find that even in the first novel, well, this is the second novel, the 2016 one, he also deals with this issue of bringing the races together. Of course, I will agree with you, Sandile, that he does so sometimes simplistically, and that's why maybe he has chosen Afrofuturism, because he projects it in the future in a utopian way, just thinking how maybe things can, the possibility. Utopianism is about possibility. So you can't stop somebody from imagining what they think it's the solution to a certain problem. But then I think it's a genuine, it's a valid concern, because it's not just so easy the way he presents it. Like in Azanian Bridges, it's about the empathy in Hesa machine, that you connect between two people, and you understand each other's past experiences and emotions. It's like a confession box, and it's at the center of the conflict in the first novel. But for him, in that novel, the idea is using the machine to bridge the racial bridge. Okay, yeah, but I understand that that's one of the problems, and because I couldn't, it's not a full paper, but that's one section that I need to interrogate him. But how do you bring this into effect now by considering that kind of problem? And also, I think your question is related to, I think, a question about what do other African writers think about the future and present it. It's an interesting question, because most of Afro-futuristic writers, science fiction writers, for example, we have heard of Nelly Carasso and others. Most of them are based in the US, and that brings in a different dynamic altogether, because they write to appeal to that audience. So most of the settings are not even African. For Nico, it's interesting because it grounds this African futurism in Africa, but also even out of Africa. So I think in terms of balance, is a bit better balanced, because you actually encounter African epistemologies, knowledge production, and even myths, because he's well familiar with these cultures, having been born here and grown up in South Africa. So there's a difference, and that's why I was interested in him in the first place, because I knew about the Okarafas before, but I was like, who else is there? Because I keep hearing about them. Who is new? What's the new voice in African science fiction? Then I came across him, and his novel hasn't been easy to find. I had to buy it from the UK. You can't find it online. So it's new, 2020. But
thank you so much. In a way, you answered also my question, why shall we read him? It's also because you're interested in different voices, but I'm also like interested in how you use the word balance, or right around it.
Yes.
Because when I hear you, a white man is a white man, even if he has the experience of living in a country that's majority black. So this is not a balanced experience of race. This is just like a white man in a black world. That's just okay. Let's just and a man that live in a world where there's also women is still a man, and a straight man is a straight man. It's not even if he lives around queer people. So what I mean, it's still valid to ask, even if you lived around black people and white and women and black women. This is matter to ask. Why are you talking from? And then what is the intersection? What is the question of ideology of gender and race? What do you project, and how do you see the resolution? And another thing is like when you say like, the domination in the romantic relationship. We all know it's not because, for example, a black woman or a black man is sexually or romantically dominating their partner, that it makes it an equal racial relationship. So I hear you, but I want to provoke you also to go a little further.
Question, because for me, as I said right at the very beginning, My focus is on sexuality as a subject, as one of the things. Those issues are also there, but for me, I was like interested in this relationship because it's bisexual and how they relate. So that's what I was interested in, and also maybe that's one of the things also to consider. What I've just said, that a man writing about women, yeah, well, I think that's something to interrogate. But and also you have said about a white man writing about African experiences. Well, yes, he's white, but he's familiar with the cultural background he has lived in. So he has got the poetic license as an individual to write. The question for us is whether to ask whether he has presented well or not. But I think as an individual, I think he can write about anything. But the way he presents that, that's what should be subjected to interrogation.
Yeah, and my question wasn't does he have the right to do it? It's like, why shall we read it, or why are we interested in it? That was more my question. Yes.
In Zambia, I can teach almost some people impact. So he's not just a white man born in Europe, he's a white man born in the middle of colonial era. In a colonial in a colony by Sudan and developed specifically to put people of his descent. The world decided to occupy Rhodesia, as he called it, because he thought there was some control of it. So I would expect perhaps him to interpret that because he comes from this lineage of other people who were privileged to be in this Rhodesia. And the Rhodesian just things out of the sky. There's a whole politics that he comes from. The worst part is he grew up in something in Africa during the era. So it's almost like he ignores this entire context. Its township was formed in the colonial era. And then Busisiwe is now a hero in the story. But our whole context, our whole history is just relegated to her just being a bisexual woman. But what about Lizette's history and her history and her historiography and her view? So all that perhaps I'm confronting. Perhaps there is a need to ask, but why is he quiet on the historiographies? Why is he quiet on how they come to live it is? With that crisis caused by colonialism that he's for this is world. So he's quite on that and how through successful iterations of capitalism is now arrived at the last crisis caused by his people, in other words. And it's quite on that. All we here is quite good of sort of like all bring out this and not as an answer and a question, but more as a thing to probe why is the historicity of 2048 so forgotten? Did it just fall out of the sky?
Thank you very much. I think you made this point before, and I think it's made this point. And I think I've also clarified my position right from the start of the presentation that as a no, and I think it's said that's one of the problems that there are many issues in one show. Even if you go online and check the summary, we see a lot of issues, and issues of race are in there, no doubt. That people pronounced in the first one as anyone. But for me, because lessons I'm interested in sexuality studies, I simply focused on tracing the relationship between these two and how it is overtaken by the social forces. But those issues are there from the beginning to the end. And Busisiwe doesn't only appear here and there. She is dominant throughout, from the first page, dominant throughout. It's about these two ladies. So for me, I was just interested about this feminist agency. That ladies are in the forefront, making change and suggesting better ways of restructuring an alternative South African future. I just found that interesting. So I just wanted to study sexuality.
Yeah.
But those issues are there. Yeah.
No, that's fascinating. So that I feel, I don't know, for those, I know that a few of you were there last week, and I can see also like commonalities in the conversation around how also a white novelist is approaching also in what kind of historiography, the Antonadia's presentation in the kind of historiography or like social context are given also to the Black character and African characters. But I like to just add, and because I like kind of the conversation. I think this is also a question that I would have for you, and that's also I think the point on intersectionality. Can you think about sexuality without thinking about gender, without thinking about race, without thinking about economic condition and history and colonial legacy, etc. Like our bodies are shaped. The way we love, the way we have sex, the way we create our intimacies is absolutely shaped by history and by race. So maybe like you're giving you like an impossible task by trying to like isolate. The sexual.
I understand your point. At this point, I think in a fuller engagement, well, this is just 20 minutes presentation, I should be able to interrogate how race is affecting the relationship. I can't run away from intersectionality.
Of course.
The focus was on, but obviously you can't run away from that because this is an inherent context within which this relationship develops. So those issues will have to be factored in a fuller presentation, not a 20 minutes.
Thank you so much. So we are approaching like the end, or not to say. Just a second. Let me guide you through this end. First, thank you so much, Innocent. It was wonderful to hear you, to hear what you have on your table, what you are working with, with all of your fascinating ideas and important also themes that you are facing, and we are we're looking forward to the final paper.
Sure.
So please share with the UMI community. Before thanking you again, I want to announce next Ataya seminar, and it's going to be with a fellow visiting research scholar here at UMA, Gabin Corbergo, that is going to present. Look like we're in the English department, we're not in the English department, and so we are going back to sociology, and we're going to West Africa, and with example on Burkina Faso, with example on Burkina Faso, it's also going. Now we go in Burkinabe territory, and I'm very pleased with that. I'm not going to be with you next week, but my colleague Fanny Chabrol is going to be like the fantastic host for this session. So please come. It's going to be exciting. And now, like a round of applause. You can. Let's be crazy. Like you can.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Audience, it's an amazing space here. My first time to be here. This is a rich tradition. So all your comments and questions will help me rethink, because we're talking about rethinking and reimagining things, to rethink some of the issues I need to tackle in my article. It's a work in progress, as I said. I've just started working. So thank you very much for the hospitality and for the comments.
Thank you.